All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for dialing into today's webinar. We've got some really exciting news to review with the group today. I'm Alvaro Warden, and I run our global channels here at Invicti. We're also joined by Patrick Vandenberg, who oversees our product marketing organization. And you've likely all seen the various forms of proactive communications that we've been providing to you in preparation of the new API security product launch. And for today's session, we'll be providing you with a high-level overview of, number one, why this is important to you, and number two, how this new release can be a growth catalyst to really fuel incremental revenue, as well as customer stickiness with both new prospects as well as your existing install base. So before we get started, just a couple of real quick housekeeping items. If anyone today has questions during the course of today's presentation, we ask that you please drop them in the live chat, and time permitting, we'll answer those live towards the end. And if we're not able to get to all of the questions, we'll certainly follow up afterwards via email. Additionally, we know we have a very, very diverse and culturally rich ecosystem of valued partners. So we're happy to announce that closed captioning is now available in Chinese, Arabic, as well as Spanish. And lastly, our wonderful partner marketing team has put together some really, really cool incentives for our participants in the form of Ray-Ban Meta smart glasses. And 10 lucky participants will walk away with one of these items. The winners will be contacted after the webinar by one of our dedicated channel account managers. So be sure to stick around to the very end of the webinar. And with that, let me pass it over to Patrick and we'll get started.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Alvaro. And hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to spend with us here. Lots of teams at Invicti really excited for this moment as we've introduced a brand new offering to our portfolio that I hope will drive everybody's success here, Invicti API security. But first we're going to start with our customers, our customer point of view, and talk about their pains. So what's really the customer problem that's setting up our entire opportunity here? So for those of you that have been working with us for any amount of time, you're very familiar with our web application security capabilities. And we know the nature of that security challenge and how our customers are going after trying to solve the identification of the vulnerabilities that they have in their web app, web page ecosystem, and provide remediation guidance for the development teams to fix those issues and cut off that risk in production environments. But along with that, as web service architectures have advanced, evolved, and even things like AI code assistants more and more coming online, development teams are now pushing development to a faster and faster pace. And what this is creating is essentially a sprawl of APIs that do have vulnerabilities in them as well. So the challenge is, how do I gather that inventory of all the APIs in my organization and apply the same process that I'm already doing with our web applications and web pages? So the challenge here is, yeah, there could be some amount of documented APIs, but the real issue is the unknown or undocumented APIs, sometimes referred to shadow or zombie APIs that are out there. And so that this slide, we want to identify a little bit of that, where the developer or the code assistant that the developer is leaning on would create the API, publish that API, but perhaps that API doesn't get registered, or the latest version information is not added, or the AppSec team isn't provided access or a copy to that API. Well, what do you do in that case? How do you test? How do you know whether there's a vulnerability or no vulnerability there? And if that's not known, what happens is the customer's application attack surface just continues to grow. So that's a big challenge. So when we look at the collection of customer challenges they're facing, Number one is the discovery and then inventory of all known and undocumented APIs so that they can go through the process of testing and remediation for any vulnerabilities. Additionally, though, I think we're all familiar with the tool sprawl and limitations of budget around security tooling in an organization. That continues to be a problem. And as I mentioned, the use of or adoption of web services in applications and then AI code assistance, that means the API attack surface is simply expanding, and in many cases expanding unchecked. And then the lack of proactive API security testing with existing solutions. So there are solutions in the market that may or may not have been adopted, but a lot of these solutions really are reactive in their testing, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. So that means the reactive means, you know, the exposure is already there and perhaps an attack's underway before it's identified that an API is exposed. It's too late. That's against the nature of application security, of finding and removing these vulnerabilities before the apps and web services go into production. So this is the set of challenges that's really driving an opportunity that we see for Invicti and all of you here with us today. And, you know, there's a dynamic that's happening in the market that I just want to touch on at a high level. We play in essentially a DaaS space and web application security, and there's a number of vendors that are looking at testing APIs to varying degrees of success, and we cite a few of them here. And some of them are starting to talk about API discovery as well. And we'll discuss how we're doing that to really a premium level. But then you have a dedicated segment of API security vendors that have dug into this space and they've built business on it. But recently, you know, the growth in that space has not been the same for them. And there's some reasons around that. There's some gaps in the portfolio. And the point of view that of having API security solutions separate from existing web application solution doesn't make sense. DAST is a natural home for both web app and API testing. So the idea of having two tools for this, that's become an issue. There's a consolidation play that's happening in the market. So with that as the backdrop of what our customers are facing, what's happening in the market, now we can get to introducing Invicti API Security. So Invicti API Security, it's a new offering that we have in our portfolio, and it delivers comprehensive API discovery using several methods: zero configuration, network traffic analysis, and API management system integrations, as well as proactive API security testing. And that happens all in a single solution along with web application security. So the key talking points around this: consolidate and simplify web application and API security needs into a single tool, discover known and undocumented APIs in a comprehensive fashion, take advantage of best-in-class proactive security testing engine for APIs as well as web applications. Yes, we do test for key OWASP API top 10 vulnerabilities automatically. And there's a new integrated API user experience that's built into the existing Invicti workflows. So all of this brings a quite high value solution to our customer base and new customers as well. So if you want quick hit on talking points, it's these 3 points: tool consolidation, comprehensive discovery, proactive security testing. That's your 1, 2, 3, bang, 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 for why a customer or new prospect would want to be looking at API security. Want to give a little bit of background too. So existing customers might not understand the dynamics, or a new prospect might be wondering, okay, but this is Invicti's a DaaS, what's going on here? If we look at what we've been doing to date, you know, that purple box reflects the Invicti platform, and we have, you know, we've been able to find web applications and we apply various testing methods. Predominant one is DaaS, but we have IAST, we have a runtime SCA as well. And we already have checks. We've had these checks for years, for a long time, for API. So we've been running these tests. It gets those API checks get run along with any web application checks. But up to this point in time, we need the customer to provide the API specifications and Swagger files for us to be able to point to those APIs and send those checks. But now we've added, as you see at the bottom here, a new API discovery module. And with that, we're able to continue to test APIs, but to a much greater extent. And so the net of this is, with this green arrow showing, we've had this workflow of finding, inventorying web apps and websites and then testing them. And all we're simply doing here in the same solution is finding APIs in a comprehensive way and testing against those APIs. So similar process, same engine, and it's consolidated into a single solution. And we've got some early validation from an organization here. I'd love to read this out because it really illustrates one of the points I mentioned earlier, where the statement here: other types of testing only show you the tip of the iceberg. DAST shows you what's under the water, and that detail is important. If you really want to know what's going on with your APIs, get DAST. So just a validation here that API security testing does fit in the DAST world, and quite organically as well. For you though, so we've talked about what the solution is and why. For customers, for you, our partners, why is this interesting? It really does boost the Why Invicti story. We continue to innovate. We've seen this year, a new offering to the market, and we continue to lead with DAST. And it's a really nice narrative here, talking points with two capabilities in one solution. So the Invicti platform, it's now a tool consolidation option. I'm sure you've heard that from your customers, but there's a host of benefits with that. So it boosts our competitiveness, extends your strength into security testing with this new segment, and it really is a comprehensive discovery capability. Even though this is a new offering, we've gotten external validation that this is the right approach, and it's done well. So with all of this, it's going to boost the win rate. So we're really excited to be seeing that. Now I'd like to step into the packaging conversation. So how are we going to market? What's available for you to bring to both existing customers and net new? So first of all, the key play here with an extensive customer base is as an add-on. So if we look at the white box representing the existing set of products that have been sold to date from Invicti, the purple box reflects this add-on capability that we can say is an upsell to existing customers. So that's the first main path opportunity. But then, of course, if there's new customers coming along, we can sell a bundle of both web application security testing and API security testing. And that also includes this new API discovery module for net new customers. And then a customer might come along and say, look, I'm not really concerned about DAST, or I already have a DAST and we're happy with it. Don't even talk to me about DAST. We can address that requirement if they're just looking for API testing or scanning use case alone. Then we have a standalone package. The one thing that's important to note across all of these is our existing pricing, the FQDN or target model that we have, stays consistent with all of these options. So if a customer, for instance, has, on the left with the add-on use case, if they happen to have purchased, let's say 35 targets, right? That API discovery module add-on, it's a t-shirt size model. There's a small, there's medium, large, based on the number of targets, and they can go ahead and purchase that model and then use the existing target license they have to test against the API, where the APIs are hosted. So there's no change to the baseline engagement with customers. That stays consistent, which is great. What it also means, though, is there might be expansion opportunities with all of these customers, certainly with new customers, depending on where their target usage is. And then for new customers in the future, there might be expansion opportunities on that target count. If we go back to that potential customer use case of 35 targets, if they had only used, let's say, 21 of the 35, they may not need expansion because they can start consuming those targets with API targets, which is great for all of us because the utilization of the product is great. Means the renewal is in better shape, all that great conversation. But let's say all 35 were fully allocated, or 32 or 35 were. It's likely a scenario where more targets are going to be required with that customer. So not only is there an immediate API discovery, but there's also expansion potential with this model. One thing I wanted to talk about too, because we've had some conversations with our own team, is what use cases does this apply to? So if we look at the ad on our existing customers, and this was true even before this new API offering, customers could scan in production. They could scan in staging or pre-production. They could scan third-party apps that they might have deployed. They can integrate, shift left integrate into their pipeline, CI/CD scanning, and also scan APIs. If we had access to the Swagger files, or now with the API discovery pulling into inventory, we can continue to scan API. So there's multiple use cases of value with the solution. The same set of use cases applies for the bundle as well. In the bundle, they're purchasing for web apps and API security testing. Standalone, though, they're purchasing the same components, the same type of licensing models, same pricing structure, but the standalone applies to the API use cases only. So that's how we're going to market. A lot of flexibility to deal with both existing customers and net new opportunities. All right, let's talk about the target audience and some positioning. So ideal customer profile for this. The great news here, very similar to when I was mentioning with the workflow of web application security, with the pricing model, packaging model of the FQDN or target-based, ICP's similar as well. Talking to the same stakeholders as web application security, AppSec and DevOps, DevSecOps. The primary, as usual, typically the security manager, the AppSec lead, with secondary stakeholders, DevOps. Additionally, though, probably more so the case with larger organizations, there may be API individuals or teams that are tasked with managing or optimizing the use of APIs across the development organization or multiple development organizations in their particular company. So, in that case, they're probably dealing with API management systems, that sort of thing. You want to ask about talking to these people as well and the challenges that they have with managing the scope of the APIs, and how many or how do they feel about documented versus undocumented. And that's going to be required to understand the scope of an opportunity as well. So that's an additional stakeholder that you want to engage in conversations. If we're looking at the programs in general, application security programs that recognize this growing challenge around application security, right? So, they know it's a need, they know it's a pain, and it could be those API teams that are driving that. Or CISOs could be driving it down to the AppSec team to say, look, you got to get a handle on this API exposure. Next, AppSec programs that are looking for a solution to identify the undocumented or shadow API. That's a conversation and a pain point that's out there. That might be, the single ask that they're looking at. And organizations that are looking at consolidating their solutions, right? So they might have a directive from the CISO to say, you got to cut budget, you got to cut tooling, because we've got other challenges across our security organization that we need to address. So you got to find ways for us here. And we're offering a way with, a 2-in-1 type of solution that doesn't cost you 2x for two different solutions. And so a lot of teams will be here just to have conversations on that point alone. So along with this, there's key questions to ask, and there's two sets here I want to share with everybody. First, exploring pain points. So we want to ask, how are you doing around discovering and inventorying all of your known and undocumented APIs? Get them talking about that. What are they dealing with around tool sprawl and any budget limitations? what's the pace of, web surface use in their applications that are getting deployed, or are they using code assistants? And if so, what are they doing for security? And they might tell you the code assistants are taking care of the secure code. The reality is that's not true. These code assistants, while teams or individual developers might think they're secure, the results prove otherwise. Code assistants are not up to speed on security, and they're not likely to be for quite some time. It's really no different dynamic from what we've been seeing with development organizations relative to building secure code. These AI assistants are not taking that challenge out of the mix. And in fact, in some cases, they may have been propagating vulnerabilities to a greater extent. And then lack of proactive API security testing. So they might have a solution in place, but it's reactive and it's just not good enough for the requirements of their security organizations. The other thing here then too is going into new capabilities into deploy. We need to understand the tech stack. So what API management solutions are used? Who owns managing the APIs? What container deployment solution is used, and are they using API gateways? So across points 1, 3, and 4, we have a core set of tech, either support or integrations for those elements. And that continues to grow from this release date. We've identified the priority ones that give us the biggest chunk of the market opportunity right now, and then we need to expand our coverage. So it's really important to understand what's here. There could be situations where a customer is looking for a particular API management system. We might not have it. We've got the big ones checked off, like Apigee, MuleSoft, etc. But there might be one that's not there yet. So collecting that information and feeding it back into our product roadmap is important. Container deployment. We support Kubernetes right now. But if customer needs something further, then we want to understand that so that we can increase our coverage. Oh, last one. I didn't click further. WAFs as well. So we already have web app firewall integrations with our existing product, and we have the same ones for APIs as well. And so we continue to expand in those in that domain. All right, a couple of high level slides I want to cover on the competitive landscape. And maybe I'll just preface, the API security vendors are living in the space and diving into a whole set of features. But that's not getting the job done in some respects. And that's why the opportunity has come to Invicti and why we've invested. So we're approaching the landscape with two lenses. One are the DAST vendors. And then we've got another slide here for the API security vendors. And based on the needs that customers have brought to us, we're simplifying the capability arena for API security in these 5 areas. And this aligns with a lot of the analyst framing at a macro level of what the needs are in this space. And the really big ones are finding the API, so getting that inventory right. And as you all know, coverage of web app discovery, we're very strong at, and we've built off of that to be very strong with APIs here. And then security testing, and this is where we're comfortably leading the market for security testing. So this is where we are going to excel with API security, with it built into a single solution around discovery and then security testing. Posture management, that's not something we or DAST vendors do, and it's questionable how important it is to a lot of customers. Protection, we do it through WAF integrations, and we don't play in an access control game. That's a different capability set altogether. And then when we look at the API security vendors, you've probably heard me drip some of the positioning along the way here against them, but again, our strength, we match up to them on the discovery side, and we by far exceed the impact that customers are looking for around security testing. This has been a gap for the security vendors. What they will typically do is watch network traffic. They'll be watching this traffic for anomalies. And when they see an anomaly, guess what? Something is already happening. So the organization is exposed. That's what we call reactive, and that's far too late. So our positioning here, when we proactively scan before these web services and applications are deployed, That's proactive. That contains the exact attack surface or the risk in the attack surface before the apps actually go live. That's the advantage that we're bringing to the table here. So we consolidate web app and API security into a single tool. We provide proactive API security testing, and we provide comprehensive discovery of APIs into the inventory system. So with that, my portion is done. Hopefully that was helpful for you all. And Oliver, I'll hand it back to you.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. Really, really, really good stuff and great information. I hope everyone on the call today sees the value as well as the market opportunity that's in front of us with this new product offering. As always, we've put together some resources for our partners. Everything can be found simply by logging into the partner portal. Simply navigate to that Assets tab. You'll find a host of useful information, part of which will include a new API security data sheet, selling scenarios for you to leverage in opportunity pursuits with both new and existing customers, as well as a detailed partner FAQ. And then last, but certainly not least, our wonderful partner marketing team. They put together a comprehensive webinar campaign in a box designed specifically to drive joint interest as well as generate demand with prospects and customers for Invicti's new API security product. And as part of our ongoing commitment and investment in our channel, we are pleased to offer this to you to opt in and participate at with no cost. And with that, we will conclude today's session, and let's go ahead and open it up for any Q&A here. Let me take a look. Okay, looks like we've got one question coming through. Just to confirm, the new API security product can be positioned to new prospects as well as standalone option and solution. Is this correct?
Yeah, and yes, it is correct. And I think I'll pop into the slides here on packaging. So we've structured the packaging in such a way that we can support the existing customer base with an upsell. So expand the capabilities so that they can get API and web apps in one. We can sell, but then there's two paths for new customers. One, if they want that same bundle, a new customer, or if they only want standalone API specifically. And what I mean by that, I'll pull up the use cases again here. So if we see on the right hand of the screen, we can sell that same collection of capabilities of API discovery and API security testing for new customers to support the API use case only if somebody's not interested in bringing that DAS capability in-house.
Excellent. Yep. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate that. I don't see any more questions coming through at this point, and I know that we're coming up on time. We definitely want to thank everyone for dialing in. We truly, truly value your partnership. A quick reminder that this recording will be made available for you to view on demand at your convenience. And with that, we will wrap up the webinar. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.